Pack of Huntresses took shelter in his hut. One whispered, "I saw him first." Before we dive into this story, drop a quick hi in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. It really helps support the channel. The storm raged outside the small prefabricated hut nestled in the dense alien forest. Logan Hayes sat alone by his makeshift fireplace, completely unaware that his solitary existence on this remote frontier planet was about to be dramatically interrupted. Logan had chosen isolation for good reason. 3 years as the sole human monitoring station operator on Verdant, officially designated as Exoplanet KG 478 by the Galactic Exploration Committee, had suited him perfectly. His job was simple: maintain the atmospheric and ecological monitoring equipment, catalog new species when he found them, and transmit monthly reports back to headquarters. The pay was excellent, the demands minimal, and best of all, no human interaction required. What the committee had failed to mention in his contract was that Verdant was also home to the Silvaki, a highly advanced species of huntresses who controlled most of the northern continent. The Silvaki were notoriously private about their territories and customs. Standing nearly 7 feet tall, with iridescent scaled skin in varying shades of emerald and sapphire, they were perfectly evolved for the dense forests of Verdant. Their large, luminescent eyes could see in near-total darkness, and their lithe, powerful bodies could move through the underbrush with supernatural silence. The committee had established his outpost on what they believed was unclaimed territory, far from any known Silvaki settlements. They were wrong. Logan stared into the flames, listening to the howling wind battering his reinforced polymer walls. The storm had arrived suddenly, as they often did on Verdant, bringing with it torrential rain and violent electrical discharges that lit up the sky like artillery fire. He'd grown accustomed to these tempests over the years, even found them soothing in their wild predictability. The security sensor chimed, a sound so unexpected that Logan nearly knocked over his cup of synthetic coffee. In 3 years, that alarm had never once activated. He scrambled to the monitoring console, heart pounding. The external camera feed showed nothing but driving rain and swaying trees. But the motion sensors were definitely triggered, multiple signatures approaching his clearing from the north. "Computer, enhance Quadrant 3, he commanded, voice steady despite his rising anxiety. The screen zoomed in, image stabilizers struggling against the storm's fury. There, a flash of movement. Then another. Tall, graceful forms emerging from the tree line, moving with purpose toward his hut. Silvaki. Not one, but 7 of them. Logan swallowed hard. He had never encountered the native species up close before, though he'd spotted them from a distance on several occasions. His briefing materials had been explicit: avoid contact if possible. The Silvaki tolerated the human presence on their world as temporary visitors, nothing more. The lead figure reached his door first, pounding on it with enough force to make the entire structure vibrate. Logan hesitated, weighing his options. Protocol said to maintain separation, but they were clearly seeking shelter from the deadly storm. Refusing them entry could be seen as a hostile act. Besides, his hut was reinforced to withstand much worse than a few visitors, no matter how tall or intimidating. Taking a deep breath, Logan disengaged the security lock. The door hissed open, and a gust of wind carrying stinging rain burst into the room. With it came the Silvaki, moving with fluid grace despite their obvious urgency. The leader entered first, ducking under the doorframe. Up close, she was even more impressive, nearly 7.5 feet of sleek, muscled predator. Her scale-flecked skin shimmered with rain, transitioning from deep forest green at her shoulders to a lighter jade at her extremities. Vertical pupils dilated in large, almond-shaped eyes that glowed with an inner amber light. She wore what appeared to be armor fashioned from some kind of hardened material, adorned with intricate patterns that might have been decorative or functional. Logan couldn't tell. Behind her filed 6 more Silvaki, each slightly different in coloration and ornamentation, but all carrying the same unmistakable air of dangerous competence. They moved with the economy of apex predators, taking in every detail of his humble dwelling with quick, assessing glances. "Storm shelter," the leader said in surprisingly fluent English, her voice a melodic contralto with an unusual flanging undertone. "Gratitude, human," Logan nodded, attempting to keep his expression neutral despite his thundering heartbeat. The storm's bad. You're welcome to wait it out here. The leader made a gesture to her companions, who immediately began removing their outer armor and weapon harnesses, stacking them neatly by the door. Logan noticed their weapons included both what appeared to be traditional hunting implements, spears and bladed weapons, and more advanced energy projectors that hinted at their species' technological sophistication. Logan, he offered, deciding that basic hospitality was the safest approach. Logan Hayes. This is Monitoring Station Verdant 7. The leader regarded him with those unnerving amber eyes, head tilting slightly in what might have been curiosity. I am Celera, first hunter of the Verdant Shadow clan. We were returning from the southern hunting grounds when the storm arose too quickly for safe travel. Another Silvaki, this one with scales in varying shades of teal and a more elaborate headpiece, stepped forward. Your dwelling is well positioned. The ancestral maps show nothing in this region. Logan cleared his throat. The committee established this outpost 3 standard years ago. I've been here alone since then. This information seemed to surprise them. Several exchanged glances, communicating in quick, subtle movements that Logan couldn't interpret. Alone? For 3 cycles? Celera asked, genuine astonishment in her tone. No clan? No hunt sisters? Just me, Logan confirmed. I monitor environmental conditions, catalog species. I don't interact much with, well, anyone. This confession elicited more meaningful glances between the Huntresses. The teal-scaled one moved closer to Celera and whispered something in her ear, eyes never leaving Logan. Though spoken in their native tongue, Logan clearly heard the words, I saw him first. Celera's response was immediate, a sharp, clicking sound that made the other Huntress step back, though her posture remained defiant rather than submissive. Marisala forgets her manners, Celera said smoothly, turning back to Logan. We will not impose long. Only until the storm passes. Logan nodded, trying to process what had just transpired. Of course, I don't have much to offer in terms of hospitality, but there's water and some ration packs if you're hungry. We have provisions, Celera replied. She gestured to the others, who began removing sealed containers from their gear. In fact, we should share our hunt with you. It would be proper. Within minutes, Logan's simple hut had transformed. The Huntresses arranged themselves in what appeared to be a hierarchical semicircle, with Celera at the center and others positioned according to some status Logan couldn't determine. They brought out portions of their hunt, prepared meats and gathered forest plants, and laid them out with ceremonial precision. As they settled, Logan noticed how they seemed to fill the space not just with their physical presence, but with an energy he couldn't quite define. They moved with a natural cohesion, like a single organism with 7 parts, communicating through subtle gestures and expressions. Join us, Logan Hayes, Celera commanded, indicating a space directly across from her. Logan hesitantly took his place in their circle, acutely aware of being the object of intense scrutiny from 7 pairs of luminescent eyes. The Huntress called Marisala sat to Celera's right, her teal scales catching the light as she watched him with undisguised interest. On Verdant, to share food is to share life, Celera explained, selecting a piece of roasted meat and offering it to him. By our custom, this makes you temporarily clan. Logan accepted the offering cautiously. I'm honored, he said, hoping that was the appropriate response. The meat had an unfamiliar but not unpleasant aroma, rich with herbs he couldn't identify. Eat, Celera encouraged. The silverfin is our most prized catch. Logan took a cautious bite. The flavor was extraordinary, somehow simultaneously delicate and intense, with hints of something like rosemary, but with an almost citrus undertone. It's delicious, he said truthfully. His appreciation seemed to please them. The tension in the room eased slightly, and the Huntresses began passing food among themselves, the ritual apparently satisfied. You are strange to us, Logan Hayes, Celera said as the meal progressed. Humans rarely venture alone into the deep forests. They cluster in their settlements on the southern shores. I prefer solitude, Logan admitted. Yet you maintain communication with your kind? Asked a Huntress with deep blue scaling. Monthly reports, nothing more. The committee doesn't care what I do as long as the data flows. Marisala leaned forward, her amber eyes reflecting the firelight. So no one would miss you if you vanished? The question held no malice, only genuine curiosity, but it sent a chill down Logan's spine nonetheless. Marisala, Celera chided, you alarm our host. I merely seek understanding, Marisala replied innocently, though her eyes remained fixed on Logan. It's all right, Logan said. It's a fair question. Yes, eventually someone would notice if my report stopped. They'd send a replacement. But it might take months. This information seemed to intrigue them all. The Huntresses exchanged more of those meaningful glances, some subtle communication happening just beyond his comprehension. Outside, lightning cracked close enough to make the hut's structural supports vibrate. The storm was intensifying rather than abating. Logan checked his weather monitoring system and frowned. The storm cell is stationary, he informed them. The system shows it might last until morning. Celera nodded, as if this confirmed something. Then we must impose on your hospitality for the night, Logan Hayes. Is this acceptable? Logan hesitated only briefly. He had limited space, but refusing didn't seem wise. Of course. It's not much, but you're welcome to stay. Gratitude, Celera responded. We will remember this kindness. As the evening progressed, Logan found himself at the center of intense but polite interrogation. The Huntresses asked countless questions about his life, his work, Earth, human society, and his reasons for choosing isolation. He answered honestly, finding their direct approach refreshing after years of political doublespeak from human administrators. In turn, they shared limited information about their society. The Silvaki, he learned, lived in clan-based matriarchal groups. Huntresses like Solara's pack held high status, providing for their settlements and protecting territories. Males were fewer in number and primarily responsible for childcare, crafting, and maintaining settlements. Their technology was advanced but deliberately integrated with natural materials, reflecting their deep connection to Verdant's ecosystem. Your kind treats worlds as resources to be used, observed a huntress named Kavila, her scales a striking pattern of emerald and gold. We see ourselves as part of Verdant, not its owners. Not all humans think alike, Logan countered. Some of us recognize the importance of balance. Is that why you are here? Marisala asked, her gaze still unervingly focused on him. To ensure balance? Partly, Logan admitted. My job is to monitor, not to interfere. To learn, not to change. This answer seemed to satisfy them, or at least intrigue them enough to prompt more questions. As they talked, Logan noticed how the Huntresses would occasionally touch one another, a hand on a shoulder, fingers brushing against an arm, maintaining physical connection as they conversed. It seemed unconscious, a natural part of their social interaction. Eventually, practical matters needed addressing. Logan's hut had only one proper bed, a small kitchen area, his workstation, and the main living space where they currently sat. I can sleep at my workstation, he offered. You can arrange yourselves in the main room, however, is comfortable. Celera conferred briefly with the others before responding. This is acceptable. We will share body warmth, as is our custom. As the night deepened, the Huntresses arranged themselves in what Logan could only describe as a communal sleeping formation, their bodies intertwined in a way that seemed both protective and nurturing. He retreated to his workstation, setting up a makeshift sleeping arrangement that gave him some privacy while still allowing him to observe his unexpected guests. From his vantage point, Logan watched as the Silvaki settled. Their breathing synchronized, creating a gentle rhythm that was somehow soothing. All except for Marisala, whose luminescent eyes remained fixed on his position, unblinking in the darkness. Logan eventually drifted into an uneasy sleep, his dreams filled with amber eyes and whispered words. I saw him first. He awoke to silence. The storm had passed, and the first light of Verdant's yellow sun filtered through his reinforced windows. Logan sat up, momentarily disoriented, before remembering the events of the previous evening. He looked to the main room, expecting to see the Huntresses still asleep. The room was empty. Logan jumped to his feet, scanning his hut. No sign of the Silvaki remained. No weapons, no armor, nothing to indicate they had ever been there. Had he dreamed the entire encounter? The security logs confirmed their presence, 7 figures entering during the storm. but the exit logs showed nothing. Somehow, they had left without triggering a single sensor. On his small dining table sat a single object, an intricately carved token made of a material resembling jade, inscribed with symbols he didn't recognize. Next to it was a piece of his own station notepaper with words written in a flowing, elegant script. The clan honors your hospitality, Logan Hayes. The forest remembers. Logan examined the token, turning it over in his hands. It was cool to the touch and seemed to pulse faintly with an inner light when he held it up to the sun. A gift? A warning? A marker of some kind? He couldn't be sure. He placed the token carefully on his workstation and tried to resume his normal routine. But as the days passed, Logan found himself increasingly distracted, constantly scanning the tree-line for signs of movement, listening for sounds beyond the usual forest chorus. 1 week after the Huntresses' visit, Logan's proximity sensors triggered again. This time, it was a single figure approaching from the east, Marisala, the teal-scaled huntress, moving with deliberate purpose toward his hut. Logan's heart rate quickened. He straightened his living space, ran a hand through his unkempt hair, and waited for the inevitable knock. When it came, he took a deep breath before opening the door. Marisala stood before him, adorned differently than before. Instead of battle armor, she wore what appeared to be ceremonial attire, fitted garments in shades of teal and silver that complemented her scaled skin, and an elaborate headdress featuring what looked like local crystals and feathers. Logan Hayes, she greeted him, her amber eyes gleaming. I come with purpose. Logan stepped aside to let her enter. What purpose would that be? Marisala moved into his hut with the same fluid grace he remembered. I bring an invitation from Salera and the clan. The season of selection approaches. Your presence is requested. Season of selection? Logan repeated cautiously. A time of great importance, Marisala explained, watching him intently. When new bonds are formed and the clan's future is secured, your participation would be significant. Logan sensed there was much left unsaid in her explanation. Why me? I'm not Silvaki. I'm not even supposed to interact with your people according to my contract. Marisala's head tilted, a gesture he now recognized as indicating curiosity or assessment. You showed courage and generosity during the storm. The clan values these traits. She paused, then added with what might have been humor. And you are the only human who has shared food with the Shadow Clan in 7 generations. This makes you unique. I'm flattered, but I'm not sure it would be appropriate for me to attend your ceremony, Logan said carefully. Marisala moved closer, her tall form looming over him. Refusal would be seen as rejection of clan honor, she said softly. Is this your intention, Logan Hayes? The implication was clear enough. No, of course not. I'm just concerned about cultural misunderstandings. Then you will come, Marisala stated, as if the matter were settled. In 3 days, when the twin moons align, I will guide you. Before Logan could formulate a response, she placed a small object in his hand, another token, similar to the one left behind before, but with different markings and a teal coloration that matched her scales. Wear this when you come, she instructed. It marks you as invited. With that, Marisala turned to leave. At the doorway, she paused and looked back at him. I still saw you first, Logan Hayes, she said, her voice carrying a new tone he couldn't interpret. Remember that when the time comes. Then she was gone, disappearing into the forest with the same supernatural silence that had marked her arrival. Logan stood holding the teal token, a sense of inevitability washing over him. His peaceful isolation had been irrevocably disrupted, and he was being pulled into something he didn't understand. The rational part of his mind warned of danger, of protocol violations, of cultural taboos he might unwittingly break. But another part, a part that had been dormant during his years of solitude, was undeniably intrigued. For 3 days, Logan alternated between anticipation and anxiety. He reviewed all available information on Silvaki culture, but the official databases contained frustratingly little detail about their social structures or ceremonies. The season of selection wasn't mentioned at all. When the appointed evening arrived, Logan found himself preparing with uncharacteristic care. He cleaned himself thoroughly, trimmed his beard, and selected the least worn of his standard-issue uniforms. He fastened the teal token to his collar, where it seemed to warm slightly against his skin. Marisala arrived precisely as the twin moons of Verdant became visible in the darkening sky. She wore the same ceremonial attire as before, but carried a small bundle wrapped in shimmering material. "You are prepared," she noted with approval. "As much as I can be for something I know nothing about," Logan replied. Marisala's expression shifted subtly. "You will be given guidance. But first, you must wear these." She unwrapped her bundle to reveal garments of a design similar to her own. Fitted clothing in muted earth tones with subtle geometric patterns woven throughout. "Traditional attire for honored guests," she explained. "Your human clothing would mark you as separate. Tonight, you should appear as part of the clan." Logan hesitated only briefly before accepting the garments. Marisala turned to give him privacy while he changed, though he noticed her head tilted slightly, allowing her peripheral vision to observe him. The Silvaki clothing fit surprisingly well, with adjustable fastenings accommodating his shorter, stockier human frame. The material felt cool and extraordinarily light against his skin. "The token," Marisala reminded him when he had finished. Logan removed it from his uniform and attached it to his new attire. As he did so, the teal stone seemed to pulse once, its color deepening momentarily. "Now you are ready," Marisala said, turning to face him fully. For a moment, she simply studied him, her amber eyes narrowing slightly. "You wear our ways well, Logan Hayes." She led him into the forest, moving along paths invisible to his human eyes. Logan activated his portable tracker discreetly, knowing he'd never find his way back otherwise. The twin moons provided ample light, filtering through the canopy to create a dappled silver illumination that transformed the familiar forest into something magical and strange. After nearly an hour of travel, Logan began to notice subtle signs of habitation. Carefully tended plants, strategic clearings, and eventually, structures built seamlessly into the massive trees themselves. Dwellings spiraled up the trunks, connected by bridges of living wood. Lights glowed from within, creating a constellation of warmth amidst the darkness. "Welcome to the Levine," Marisala said, gesturing to the arboreal settlement. "Part of the Shadow Clan territories." Logan stared in amazement. The Silvaki settlement was far more extensive than he'd imagined, yet nearly invisible unless you knew exactly what to look for. No wonder the committee's surveys had missed it. "It's beautiful," he said truthfully. Marisala seemed pleased by his reaction. "Come, they are waiting." She led him toward the center of the settlement, where a massive clearing opened up beneath the largest tree Logan had ever seen. Its trunk must have been 30 meters in diameter, with a canopy that spread outward like a verdant cathedral ceiling. Around its base, hundreds of Silvaki had gathered, their scaled skin creating a shimmering mosaic of greens and blues in the moonlight. Their arrival did not go unnoticed. Conversations quieted as Logan was led through the gathering, curious eyes following his progress. Unlike the wary reception he'd expected, the gazes seemed more intrigued than hostile. Many Silvaki touched their foreheads in a gesture he assumed was some form of acknowledgement. At the base of the great tree was a raised platform covered in luminescent moss. Upon it stood Celera and several other Silvaki wearing elaborate ceremonial attire. Celera stepped forward as they approached, her expression unreadable. "Logan Hayes," she greeted him formally. "You honor us with your presence." "The honor is mine," Logan replied, hoping the standard diplomatic response was appropriate. Celera turned to address the gathered crowd, speaking in the Silvaki language, a complex symphony of clicks, trills, and melodic tones. Though he couldn't understand the words, Logan recognized his name mentioned several times, each occurrence causing ripples of reaction through the assembly. When she finished, Celera turned back to him. "I have explained your status as clan friend and honored guest," she said. "Now the ceremony of selection may begin." What followed was unlike anything Logan had experienced. The Silvaki formed concentric circles in the clearing, moving in choreographed patterns that seemed both ritualistic and joyful. Music rose from unseen musicians. Haunting melodies played on instruments that produced sounds unlike any human orchestration. Marisala remained at his side, occasionally whispering explanations. "This is the dance of potential," she said as younger Silvaki moved to the inner circles. Those seeking bonds display their strengths and qualities. Logan watched, entranced, as the dance grew more elaborate. The performers demonstrated not only physical prowess, but also what appeared to be personal achievements, some showcasing crafted items, others performing feats of mental calculation or recitation. And those observing, he asked, noting how intently the outer circles watched. They consider compatibility, Marisala explained. When the dance concludes, they will approach those they wish to bond with. Like courtship, Logan murmured. Marisala's amber eyes gleamed. Yes, but with purpose beyond simple attraction. Bonds must strengthen the clan, bring new skills, new bloodlines, new perspectives. As she spoke, Logan became aware of a subtle shift in the atmosphere. More and more glances were being directed not at the dancers, but at him. Why are they looking at me? He whispered. Marisala's expression held something like satisfaction. Because you are new, unknown, different. You represent potential they have never considered. Before Logan could respond, Celera approached and addressed Marisala in their language. Though he couldn't understand, the tension between them was palpable. After a brief exchange, Celera turned to him. It is time for you to participate, Logan Hayes. Logan stiffened. Participate? I thought I was just observing. To observe without participation would be an insult, Celera stated. Do not fear. You are asked only to share your story, your journey, your skills, your purpose on Verdant. Relief washed over him. That I can do. Celera led him to the center of the gathering. The dancing ceased, all eyes fixed upon the human in their midst. Logan felt a moment of panic. Public speaking had never been his forte, which was partly why he'd chosen isolation, but the token at his collar suddenly warmed, and with it came a strange calmness. My name is Logan Hayes, he began, his voice steady. I come from Earth, third planet of the Sol system. Logan spoke of his training as a xenobiologist, his work monitoring Verdant's complex ecosystems, his discoveries, and daily routines. As he continued, he found himself sharing more personal details, his preference for solitude after years in overcrowded Earth cities, his appreciation for Verdant's unspoiled wilderness, his belief in respectful coexistence rather than exploitation. The Silvaki listened with remarkable intensity. Logan had the uncanny feeling they were absorbing not just his words, but something deeper, as if they could sense the truth behind his statements, the conviction in his beliefs. When he finished, there was a moment of profound silence, broken only by the natural sounds of the forest night. Then Celera stepped forward again. The human has shared his essence, she announced. Those who see compatibility may now approach. Logan expected polite acknowledgement, perhaps a few curious questions. He was unprepared for what actually happened. First one, then three, then nearly a dozen female Silvaki stepped forward, each placing a token similar to the ones he had been given at his feet. The tokens formed a growing pool of color, teals, jades, sapphires, emeralds, each glowing faintly in the moonlight. Marisala moved to his side, her expression both proud and possessive. They seek to bond with you, she explained, her voice low. But I saw you first. Logan struggled to maintain his composure. Bond, as in marriage. A deeper connection than your human concept, Marisala corrected. A sharing of life paths. A merging of purpose. But I'm human, Logan protested weakly. I'm not even the same species. Your difference is precisely what makes you valuable, came Solara's voice as she rejoined them. The clan grows stronger through diversity. New blood, new ideas, new adaptations. She studied him with those penetrating amber eyes. And there is compatibility enough where it matters. The implications made Logan's mind reel. He looked at the tokens scattered at his feet, each representing a Silvaki female who had, essentially, proposed to him. Among them, Marisala's teal token seemed to shine brightest. I don't know what to say, he admitted. In human culture, this would be unexpected. You need not decide immediately, Celera assured him. The selection extends through 7 nights. You may consider each offer, speak with those who have chosen you, before making your choice. And if I choose not to choose? Logan asked carefully. Solara's expression hardened slightly. That would be disappointing, but your free will is respected. You would remain clan friend, but the opportunity would pass. Marisala touched his arm lightly, drawing his attention. Do not answer now. Experience our ways first. Then decide. What followed was a feast unlike any Logan had experienced. The Silvaki celebration involved elaborate food preparations, ritual sharing of specially prepared beverages, and performances that demonstrated their cultural heritage. Throughout it all, Logan found himself the center of attention, particularly from those who had placed tokens at his feet. They approached him one by one, each introducing herself and sharing stories of her accomplishments, her place within the clan, her visions for the future. Some were huntresses like Marisala and Celera. Others were crafters, healers, scholars, or held positions he couldn't quite translate into human concepts. Marisala remained close, her presence both protective and possessive. Whenever another Silvaki spoke with Logan for too long, she would find a way to interject or redirect the conversation. Her claim, "I saw him first," seemed to carry legitimate weight in their social hierarchy. As the night progressed, Logan found himself increasingly drawn to these strange, sophisticated beings. Their society was complex, their technology integrated seamlessly with nature in ways human engineers could only dream of achieving. Their understanding of Verdant's ecosystems far surpassed his own scientific knowledge, based as it was on generations of intimate connection with the planet. Yet there was also much they could learn from humans. They were curious about Earth's diverse biomes, about human adaptability, about the technologies that allowed interstellar travel. Logan found himself explaining concepts that he'd taken for granted, seeing them anew through alien eyes. By the time the twin moons had completed their arc across the sky, Logan was exhausted but exhilarated. Marisala approached him as the gathering began to disperse. "You will stay in the Levine for the duration of the selection," she informed him. "I have prepared a dwelling for you." Too tired to argue, Logan followed her through the settlement to a small but comfortable structure built into the lower branches of a tree. The interior was surprisingly accommodating to human proportions, with furnishings that, while alien in design, served familiar functions. "Rest," Marisala said, lingering at the entrance. "Tomorrow, you will learn more of our ways." "Thank you," Logan said sincerely, "for all of this. It's overwhelming, but fascinating." Marisala's expression softened. "Sleep well, Logan Hayes. Remember who saw you first." With that cryptic reminder, she departed, leaving him alone with his thoughts. Logan sat on the edge of the surprisingly comfortable sleeping platform, trying to process everything that had happened. In a single night, he'd gone from isolated researcher to the most eligible bachelor in an alien society. The diplomatic implications alone were staggering. He'd have to report this contact eventually, but doing so might bring unwanted human attention to the Silvaki. And then there were the personal implications. The Silvaki clearly believed there was sufficient biological compatibility for some form of bonding. Was such a thing even possible? Ethical? Desirable? Logan thought of Marisala's intense focus, her possessive declarations. There was something compelling about her interest, something that stirred long-dormant emotions. But was it genuine connection, or simply the novelty of difference? These questions swirled in his mind as exhaustion claimed him, pulling him into dreams filled with dancing scaled forms and glowing amber eyes. The next 6 days unfolded in a pattern of cultural immersion. Each morning, Logan was guided through different aspects of Silvaki society. Their sustainable agricultural practices, their educational systems, their governance structures. Each afternoon brought formal meetings with those who had expressed interest in bonding, carefully supervised encounters where he learned more about each potential partner. And each evening culminated in celebrations, feasting, music, storytelling, and demonstrations of Silvaki art and culture. Through it all, Marisala remained his primary guide and companion. Her interest in him never wavered, though she respected the formal process that gave others their opportunity to connect with him. Logan found himself increasingly drawn to her directness, her fierce intelligence, and her genuine curiosity about his human perspective. By the 6th day, Logan had come to a profound realization. He felt more at home among the Silvaki than he ever had among his own kind. Their balance of community and individual purpose, their deep connection to their environment, their straightforward approach to communication, all resonated with values he'd held but rarely found reflected in human society. On the morning of the 7th day, the day he was expected to make his choice, Logan woke to the sound of commotion outside his dwelling. Voices raised in alarm, movement more hurried than the usual graceful Silvaki pace. He dressed quickly in the now familiar Silvaki garments and emerged to find Marisala waiting, her expression grave. "What's happening?" he asked. "Humans," she replied tersely. "Many. With machines and weapons. They approach from the south." Logan's stomach dropped. "The committee? But they're not scheduled for contact or inspection for months." "Not committee," Marisala corrected. "These bear different markings." Celera recognized them from old encounters. "They are from the corporation that seeks the crystal pools." Logan cursed under his breath. Nova Extraction Corporation had been lobbying for access to Verdant for years, interested in the planet's rare mineral deposits. The committee had denied their requests pending further environmental impact studies and diplomatic progress with the indigenous population. "They're not supposed to be here," Logan said. "This is a protected planet under Galactic Charter." "Yet they come," Marisala replied grimly, "with machines that tear Earth." Logan was led to a gathering of clan leaders, where Celera was already organizing a response. Displayed on what appeared to be a living screen of bioluminescent material was a real-time image of the intruders, a column of heavy extraction equipment accompanied by armed security personnel in Nova Corp uniforms. "They follow the southern river," Celera explained as Logan joined them, "directly toward the sacred pools." The sacred pools. Logan had learned of them during his cultural education. They were not only spiritually significant to the Silvaki, but also ecologically crucial, containing unique microorganisms that helped purify Verdant's water systems. And, unfortunately, they were also rich in the rare crystalline minerals Nova Extraction coveted. How did they get planetary clearance? Logan wondered aloud. "The committee controls all approach vectors." "Perhaps your committee was overruled," suggested an older Silvaki with silver-streaked scales. "Or deceived." Logan frowned. It was possible. Corporate interests held significant sway in some sectors of human governance. "What are you planning to do?" "Defend what is ours," Celera stated simply. "The hunters prepare even now." Logan's mind raced. A direct confrontation would be disastrous. The Silvaki were formidable, but Nova's security forces would be equipped with military-grade weapons. Even if the Silvaki prevailed, it would establish a hostile precedent for human-Silvaki relations that could last generations. "Wait," he said urgently. "Let me try something first. I'm still a committee representative. I might be able to stop this without bloodshed." The Silvaki leaders exchanged glances, communicating in their subtle, nonverbal way. "What do you propose, Logan Hayes?" Celera finally asked. "Let me approach them officially. Remind them of the legal protections in place. If they're operating without proper clearance, the threat of committee sanctions might be enough to turn them back." "And if it is not?" Marisala asked, her voice sharp with concern. "Then at least we'll know their intentions for certain," Logan replied. "And I can alert committee headquarters. They can dispatch peacekeepers." After brief deliberation, Celera nodded. "We will try your way first, Logan Hayes. But we will also prepare for ours." Logan returned to his hut to retrieve his official uniform and credentials. As he prepared to leave, Marisala arrived, now clad in full hunting armor, her expression fierce. "You will not go alone," she stated. "Marisala, this is not negotiable," she interrupted. "Where you go, I go. I saw you first, remember?" Logan recognized the futility of arguing. "Fine, but stay back when I make contact. Let me handle the talking." They set out immediately, moving through the forest at a pace that challenged Logan's endurance. Marisala easily adapted to his slower human speed, though he could sense her impatience. As they traveled, Logan used his portable communicator to send an encrypted alert to committee headquarters, detailing the unauthorized Nova presence and requesting immediate intervention. They intercepted the Nova expedition near a narrow part of the river, where the heavy machinery had slowed to navigate the difficult terrain. Logan instructed Marisala to remain concealed in the tree-line while he approached openly, his official uniform and credentials clearly visible. "Hold your position," he called out with all the authority he could muster. "This is Monitoring Officer Logan Hayes, Galactic Exploration Committee. You are in violation of protected territory. The expedition ground to a halt. A woman in a Nova executive uniform stepped forward, flanked by two security officers with hands resting on holstered weapons. Officer Hayes. She greeted him with artificial warmth. What an unexpected pleasure. I'm Director Eliza Warner, Nova Extraction Operations. We were unaware the committee maintained an outpost in this region. You're aware that all of Verdant is under committee protection, Logan replied, ignoring her feigned surprise. Nova's applications for extraction rights have been denied pending impact studies. Warner's smile didn't waver. Perhaps you haven't received the latest updates from headquarters, being so remote. Our application has received preliminary approval for a survey expedition. We're simply conducting initial assessments. She produced a document on a corporate datapad. Logan examined it carefully. The authorization looked legitimate, with appropriate committee seals, but the wording was suspiciously vague, authorizing a limited resource survey, without specifying locations or extraction methods. This doesn't authorize heavy machinery or armed personnel, Logan pointed out, and it certainly doesn't grant access to indigenous territories. Warner's expression hardened slightly. Indigenous territories? Our surveys show this region as uninhabited. If you've encountered native life forms, that information should have been reported immediately. The implied threat was clear. She was suggesting he had violated protocol by withholding information, potentially undermining his authority. The committee is well aware of the Silvaki presence on Verdant, Logan stated firmly, though in truth, he'd never reported his recent close contact. Their territorial rights are protected under Section 7 of the Charter. Territorial rights require formal claim and registration, Warner countered smoothly. We've reviewed all filings. There are no registered claims for this region. Logan realized he was losing ground in this legal sparring match. The Silvaki had never engaged with human bureaucratic processes. Why would they? From their perspective, they had inhabited Verdant for thousands of years. Their claim was self-evident. Regardless of paperwork, he said, changing tactics, I am ordering you to halt this expedition immediately pending committee review. Your authorization is for survey only, not for the extraction equipment I can clearly see you're transporting. Warner's artificial smile returned. The equipment is merely for clearing access routes for our survey teams. Surely you understand the difficulties of navigating this terrain. Behind her, Logan could see at least 3 industrial excavators and what appeared to be crystalline separation machinery, far more than would be needed for creating access paths. I've already alerted committee headquarters, Logan informed her. Peacekeepers will be dispatched to ensure compliance with protected status protocols. For the first time, Warner looked slightly uncertain. That seems an excessive response to a simple survey mission. Perhaps, but until they arrive, your expedition will remain exactly where it is. Logan stood his ground, hoping his bluff about the immediacy of committee response would hold. Warner studied him for a long moment before replying. Very well, Officer Hayes. We'll await clarification from headquarters. She turned to her security team. Establish a perimeter. No further advancement until authorized. Logan maintained his official posture, but felt a surge of relief. He'd bought time, at least. I'll expect your cooperation, Director. Good day. As he turned to leave, Warner called after him. One question, Officer Hayes. How did you know we were here? Your outpost is quite distant from our approach vector. Logan paused, but didn't turn around. The committee has monitoring systems throughout the planet, Director. Now, if you'll excuse me. He walked away with measured steps, feeling Warner's calculating gaze on his back. Only when he'd reached the tree line where Marisala waited did he release the breath he'd been holding. They stopped for now, Marisala observed. But their eyes speak of temporary retreat, not surrender. You're right, Logan agreed as they moved deeper into the forest. They'll wait for a response from headquarters, realize no peacekeepers are actually coming immediately, and then proceed anyway. We've gained hours, not days. Then we must use these hours wisely, Marisala said, her expression grim. When they returned to the Levine, they found the settlement transformed. The peaceful arboreal village had become a war camp, with Huntresses preparing weapons and younger Silvaki securing dwellings. Celera met them in the central clearing, now a staging area for defense. What news? She demanded. Logan explained the confrontation and his assessment of Nova's likely actions. They'll probably wait until nightfall, then continue toward the crystal pools. They know exactly where they're going. How? Asked one of the elder Silvaki. The pools are hidden deep within our territories. Orbital scanning, Logan explained. The crystalline formations have a unique signature that can be detected from space. Nova specializes in finding such deposits. Solara's expression darkened. So they have always known of our treasures. They merely waited for opportunity. Likely, yes, Logan admitted. The committee's protection has been the main thing keeping them at bay. But they've found a loophole in the regulations. If there's no officially registered indigenous claim, they can argue the territory is open for survey and potential development. We claim it by right of ancient presence, Marisala said fiercely. Not by human papers. I know, Logan said gently. But in human legal systems, documentation often matters more than reality. It's one of our worst traits. The gathered Silvaki digested this information silently. Finally, Celera spoke. We have decided. We will meet them before they reach the pools. Not to fight, unless forced, but to stand as living proof of our claim to this land. Logan nodded slowly. A visible demonstration of indigenous presence would strengthen the legal case against Nova's incursion. But they're not going to simply turn around because you ask nicely. We do not intend to ask, Celera replied with quiet intensity. We intend to show. What Celera proposed was both simple and profound. A massive gathering of Silvaki from multiple clans, positioned directly in Nova's path. Not as warriors, though they would be prepared to defend themselves, but as a community conducting a sacred ceremony at an ancient marker stone that happened to be directly in the extraction team's route. Our presence will be documented by their own equipment, Celera explained. They cannot later claim ignorance of indigenous habitation. Logan saw the wisdom in the approach. Nova might be willing to bend regulations, but outright violation of indigenous rights, recorded on their own devices, would be harder to justify to committee regulators. I'll go with you, he offered. As an official committee representative, my presence will add another layer of legitimacy to the protest. The Silvaki leaders accepted his offer with what appeared to be relief. Plans were quickly formalized, runners dispatched to neighboring clans, ceremonial preparations begun, defensive positions established just in case. Throughout the frantic activity, Logan noticed that the tokens from the selection ceremony had been carefully gathered and preserved. Despite the crisis, cultural continuity remained important. As dusk approached, Marisala found him preparing his equipment for the night ahead. The selection ceremony remains unfinished, she said without preamble. You have not made your choice. Logan looked up in surprise. I thought that would be postponed, given the circumstances. Some matters transcend immediate concerns, Marisala replied. The clan's future extends beyond this crisis. Bonds must be formed, lives joined, strengths combined. Logan set down his gear and faced her directly. Marisala, I can't think about that right now. We're facing a potential conflict that could reshape human-Silvaki relations for generations. Precisely why your choice matters, she insisted. Who you bond with will influence your place among us, your voice in our council, your legacy in our future. Logan stared at her, finally understanding. You still expect me to stay, even after this is resolved. To live among the Silvaki permanently. Where else would you go? Marisala asked, genuine confusion in her voice. Your isolation is broken. Your connection to the clan is formed. And you have found more belonging here in 7 days than in your entire human existence. She stepped closer, her amber eyes holding his gaze. Can you deny this truth, Logan Hayes? He couldn't. Despite the current crisis, or perhaps because of it, Logan had reached a crossroads in his life. His years of self-imposed exile had been a retreat from human society, not a rejection of connection itself. Among the Silvaki, he'd found a community whose values and way of life resonated with his own deepest beliefs. No, he admitted softly. I can't deny it. Marisala's expression softened. Then make your choice, Logan Hayes. Before we face what comes. Logan took a deep breath. I think you know my choice already, Marisala. You saw me first, after all. Her eyes widened slightly, then glowed with an inner light that reflected her emotion. You choose me. I do, Logan confirmed, surprising himself with how right it felt to say the words. Whatever happens tonight, whatever comes after, I choose you. Marisala's reaction was immediate and uninhibited. She stepped forward and pressed her forehead to his, a gesture he'd learned was deeply significant among the Silvaki, representing the joining of minds and purposes. I accept your choice, Logan Hayes, she said, her voice vibrating with emotion. Let us face this challenge as bondmates, our strengths united. The moment was interrupted by a signal from outside. The gathering was ready to depart. Logan and Marisala separated, but something had fundamentally changed between them. A commitment had been made, a future path chosen. They joined the assembled Silvaki, now numbering nearly 300 from various clans. Salera addressed them briefly in their native language, then switched to English for Logan's benefit. Tonight we stand for our world, for our ways, for our future, she declared. We stand not in violence, but in truth. Let the humans see us as we are, the children and caretakers of Verdant. With that, the massive procession moved through the forest, a river of scaled bodies flowing silently between the ancient trees. Logan walked beside Marisala near the front, his human form conspicuous among the taller Silvaki. Around his neck hung the teal token, now formally accepted, marking his choice and his future. They reached the marker stone, an enormous monolith of the same crystalline material Nova sought to extract, just as true darkness fell. The Nova expedition, as Logan had predicted, had resumed its advance and would reach this location within the hour. The Silvaki arranged themselves in concentric circles around the stone, just as they had during the selection ceremony. But instead of displaying individual talents, they began a unified ceremonial dance, moving in perfect synchronization while singing in their melodic language. The effect was mesmerizing, hundreds of voices and bodies creating patterns of sound and movement that seemed to resonate with the crystal itself, causing it to glow with increasing intensity. Logan stood with Salera and the clan leaders slightly apart, watching both the ceremony and the forest edge where Nova would emerge. Marisala had reluctantly joined the outer circle of Huntresses who formed a protective perimeter, their ceremonial attire belying the weapons they carried discreetly. What will you do when they arrive? Logan asked Salera quietly. Continue our ceremony, she replied simply. They must physically move through us to reach their destination. Each step they take will deepen their violation. And if they try to disperse you by force? Salara's expression hardened. Then the ceremony becomes a different kind of dance. The sound of machinery growing louder announced Nova's approach before they appeared. Heavy treads crushed underbrush, engines rumbled, and the harsh artificial lights of the expedition cut through the natural darkness of the forest. The Silvaki continued their ceremony without faltering, though Logan noticed subtle shifts in positioning that better protected the younger and older members of the community. The first Nova security personnel emerged from the treeline, weapons drawn but pointed downward. They halted in evident surprise at the scene before them. Hundreds of Silvaki engaged in ritual, the massive crystal pulsing with light at the center. Director Warner pushed through their line, her expression shifting from determination to calculation as she assessed the situation. Logan stepped forward, once again in his official uniform. Director Warner, as you can see, this territory is clearly inhabited and culturally significant to the indigenous population. Your expedition must withdraw immediately. Warner's gaze swept over the gathered Silvaki, lingering on the glowing crystal monolith. An impressive display, Officer Hayes. One might almost think it had been hastily arranged specifically to block our path. This ceremony has been conducted at this location for thousands of years, Logan replied evenly. Your timing is the coincidence, not theirs. Warner smiled thinly. Indeed. How fortunate that we can witness such an authentic cultural experience. She gestured to one of her team, who Logan noticed was recording everything. We'll certainly want to document this for the committee's cultural preservation archives. The implied threat was clear. They were gathering evidence to argue that they had respectfully halted their expedition upon discovering indigenous activity, presenting themselves as responsible corporate citizens while they waited for regulatory clearance. The ceremony will continue for several days, Logan improvised. knowing that the longer he could delay them, the better the chances of real committee intervention. It would be a sign of respect to withdraw to a suitable distance. Warner's smile didn't waver. Of course, we'll establish an observation perimeter to ensure we don't intrude. She turned to her security team. Set up a parameter 50 meters back. Minimal disruption. This was not the retreat Logan had hoped for. Nova was simply settling in to wait, maintaining their position while documenting everything. If committee reinforcements didn't arrive soon, Warner would eventually claim that they had shown appropriate respect but needed to continue their survey. As if reading his thoughts, Warner added, "We've received word from committee headquarters, by the way. It seems there was some confusion about our authorization. They've clarified that our survey may proceed, provided we maintain appropriate protocols regarding indigenous encounters." She held up her datapad, displaying what appeared to be an official committee communication. Logan couldn't tell if the document was legitimate or fabricated. Either was possible. Nova had considerable influence and might have obtained rushed approval while emphasizing the survey aspect and downplaying their actual intentions. "I haven't received any such update," he challenged. Warner's expression turned sympathetic. "Communications to your isolated outpost may be delayed. I'd be happy to share our directives." Before Logan could respond, the ceremony reached a crescendo. The Silvaki movement became more intense, their singing louder and more complex. The crystal monolith pulsed with increasingly bright light, creating patterns that cascaded through its structure. Then something unexpected happened. The crystal's light extended outward, creating luminescent pathways along the ground that connected to other, smaller crystals embedded in the forest floor, crystals Logan hadn't noticed before. These too began to glow, creating a vast network of light that spread outward in all directions. The Silvaki continued their ceremony, apparently unperturbed by this development, but Logan could see Warner and her team reacting with a mixture of surprise and avid interest. Their scanning equipment was working overtime, recording everything. "Remarkable," Warner breathed, her composure momentarily broken by genuine wonder. "The crystalline network is far more extensive than our surveys indicated. It must run throughout the entire region." Logan realized with growing alarm what this meant. The ceremonial activation of the crystal network had inadvertently revealed to Nova the true extent of the deposit they sought to exploit, a deposit that apparently underlaid the entire Silvaki territory, not just the sacred pools. Warner composed herself quickly. "Well, this changes our survey priorities somewhat." She turned to her operations team. "Begin comprehensive scanning. I want complete mapping of the network." "Director Warner," Logan interjected firmly, "you cannot proceed with any form of extraction. This is clearly a culturally significant system integral to indigenous practices." "Extraction? Who said anything about extraction?" Warner replied innocently. "We're conducting a scientific survey of a remarkable natural phenomenon. The committee will be fascinated by our findings." Logan knew this was merely the first step. Once Nova documented the extent of the crystal network, they would leverage their political connections to push for limited extraction rights, argue for the scientific and economic benefits, and gradually expand their operations. It was their standard playbook on dozens of worlds. As this realization dawned, Logan felt a presence beside him. Marisala had left her position to join him, her expression grave as she observed the Nova team's activities. "They see the heart paths," she said quietly. "The living connections of Verdant." "Yes," Logan confirmed grimly. "And they want to tear them out of the ground." Marisala's amber eyes narrowed. "This cannot happen." Before Logan could respond, Celera approached, having entrusted the ceremony to other leaders. "The crystal awakening was not meant for their eyes," she said, anger evident in her tone. "It responds to our unity, our connection to Verdant. Now they covet what they cannot understand." Logan looked between the two Silvaki leaders, then back at Warner directing her team's increasingly invasive scanning. A decision crystallized in his mind, one that would irrevocably change his relationship with human authorities, but might be the only way to protect the world that had become his home. "I need to contact committee headquarters directly," he told them. "Not just an alert, but a comprehensive report. With evidence." Celera tilted her head questioningly. "What would this achieve?" "Nova is operating in a gray area of regulation," Logan explained. They're counting on bureaucratic delays and their political influence to eventually get what they want. But if I file an emergency indigenous protection claim, with complete documentation of Silvaki culture and territorial boundaries, it would trigger mandatory protective measures. You would expose our ways to your kind. Marisala asked, concern evident in her voice. Only what's necessary to establish your legal claim, Logan assured her. The committee's indigenous protection protocols are strict. Once invoked, they supersede corporate interests. Celera and Marisala exchanged one of their meaningful glances, communicating in that subtle, nonverbal way Logan had come to recognize but not yet understand. What would you require? Celera finally asked. Official declaration of Silvaki territorial boundaries, documentation of long-term habitation, evidence of the cultural significance of the crystal network. Logan paused, then added the most crucial element. And formal acknowledgement of me as a clan-bonded advocate with authority to speak for Silvaki interests. This last request clearly surprised them. It would be unprecedented, a human officially recognized as part of Silvaki society, with legal standing to represent them in committee proceedings. You would stand between your kind and ours. Celera asked carefully. I've made my choice, Logan replied, glancing at Marisala and the teal token he wore. My future is with the clan. With Verdant. Marisala's expression softened with emotion, while Solara's remained analytical, considering the implications. It will be as you suggest, Celera finally decided. Return to your outpost to send your report. Marisala will accompany you with the necessary evidence. We will maintain our position here. Logan nodded gratefully. What about Warner and her team? They will find us, uncooperative with their scanning, Celera said with subtle menace. Though no harm will come to them unless they initiate conflict. With plans established, Logan and Marisala slipped away from the confrontation site, circling wide around Nova's perimeter to avoid detection. They moved swiftly through the night forest, Marisala guiding them along hidden paths that shaved hours off the journey back to Logan's outpost. As they traveled, Marisala explained more about the crystal network, the heart paths, as the Silvaki called them. They were not merely mineral deposits, but something between geology and biology, a planet-wide system that helped regulate Verdant's climate, purify its waters, and even facilitate communication between various ecosystems. The Silvaki had learned to interface with this network through their ceremonies, maintaining balance and harmony. Nova sees only stones to be collected, Marisala said bitterly as they neared the outpost. They cannot comprehend that they would be tearing out Verdant's veins and arteries. Logan listened with growing determination. What Nova proposed wasn't just cultural insensitivity, it was potential ecological devastation. The committee needed to understand what was truly at stake. When they reached his hut, Logan immediately activated his official communication array, a much more powerful system than his portable device. While it initialized, Marisala produced a crystal storage device from her gear. Our elders prepared this while the gathering assembled, she explained, handing it to him. It contains the knowledge you requested, our boundaries, our history, our connection to the heart paths. Some has never been shared with outsiders before. Logan accepted the device with appropriate solemnity. I'll ensure it's protected under indigenous knowledge protocols. Only those who need to know will access it. He connected the Silvaki device to his system, surprised at its technical compatibility. The data transfer began immediately, revealing itself as a comprehensive archive of Silvaki history, territory maps, and cultural information, carefully curated to establish their legal claim without exposing sensitive traditions. While this transferred, Logan drafted his formal report, a meticulous documentation of Nova's unauthorized activities, the Silvaki presence, and the ecological significance of the crystal network. He included his own official logs of his contact with the Silvaki, his observations of their sustainable relationship with Verdant's ecosystems, and finally, his declaration of clan bond status. This last element would be unprecedented in committee records. Logan hesitated briefly before entering it, knowing it would end his career as a conventional committee officer. But as he glanced at Marisala, who watched him work with quiet intensity, he felt only certainty about his path forward. He completed the report, attached the Silvaki documentation, and activated the emergency transmission protocol. This would send his report directly to the highest levels of the committee's Indigenous Protection Division, bypassing standard bureaucratic channels that Nova might influence. "It's done," he told Marisala as the system confirmed transmission. "Now we wait. It will take at least 12 hours for a response, given the communication relay distances." Marisala moved closer, studying him with those penetrating amber eyes. "You have chosen a difficult path, Logan Hayes. Between worlds, between peoples. I've chosen the right path," he replied with conviction. "For me, at least." She touched his face gently, the gesture conveying more than words could express. "When the storm brought us to your dwelling, I saw something rare, a human who lived with rather than upon the world around him. I was right to claim you first." Logan smiled, covering her hand with his own. "I'm beginning to understand what that means, to be claimed, to belong." Their moment of connection was interrupted by an urgent alert from Logan's security system. Multiple signatures approaching from the south, moving fast. Logan checked the external cameras and cursed softly. Nova security personnel, at least 8 of them, approaching his outpost with weapons drawn. Warner must have connected him to the Silvaki retreat and sent a team to intercept him. "We need to move," he told Marisala urgently. "They can't be allowed to access this system or the data we've transmitted." Marisala was already gathering her gear, her movements swift and precise. "The forest will hide us. We'll return to the Levine by the eastern paths." Logan quickly initiated his system's security protocols, encrypting and then purging all local copies of his report and the Silvaki data. The original transmission couldn't be recalled, but he could prevent Nova from discovering exactly what he'd sent. As a final measure, he activated the outpost's emergency lockdown, a procedure designed for environmental hazards that would seal the structure and require committee override codes to access. It wouldn't stop a determined Nova team indefinitely, but it would slow them down. "Ready," he told Marisala, grabbing only his most essential gear. They slipped out through the outpost's secondary exit, a narrow emergency hatch that opened into dense underbrush. Logan heard the Nova team reaching the main entrance just as they disappeared into the forest's embrace. Marisala led him through the darkness with supernatural confidence, choosing paths invisible to human eyes. They moved in silence for nearly an hour before she finally slowed their pace. "They will not find our trail," she assured him. "The forest keeps our secrets." Logan nodded, his breathing ragged from the exertion. "Nova won't give up easily. Warner struck me as someone used to getting what she wants. She will not have Verdant," Marisala stated with calm certainty. They continued through the night, taking a circuitous route back toward the Levine. As dawn approached, they paused to rest in a small clearing beside one of Verdant's many streams. While Logan refreshed himself, Marisala stood watch, her posture alert but not tense. "What happens when we return?" Logan asked as he rejoined her. "With Nova still present and the committee's response hours away, what's the clan's next move?" "We maintain our position," Marisala replied simply. "We show them that we are immovable. That Verdant is not theirs to take." Logan admired her resolve, but worried about the practical realities. Nova has weapons, heavy machinery. If Warner decides to force the issue, then we will see if she values crystals more than the lives of her people, Marisala said with sudden, cold intensity. The Huntresses are prepared. The implication disturbed Logan. Violence would only harm your position with the committee. First blood is a legal threshold you don't want to cross. Marisala's expression softened slightly as she regarded him. "You fear for us. This is good. But understand, we have defended Verdant for thousands of years against threats of many kinds. We have ways that do not require bloodshed but are no less effective." Before Logan could ask for clarification, a sound caught their attention, a high-pitched tone that seemed to resonate through the forest itself. Marisala straightened, head tilting in that characteristic listening posture. "The signal," she said, suddenly urgent. "We must hurry." They resumed their journey at a faster pace, Marisala no longer concerned with hiding their trail. As they approached the Levine, Logan began to notice something strange, a vibration in the ground, subtle but persistent, like a distant earthquake. When they finally reached the settlement, they found it almost deserted, with only a few elders and young Silvaki remaining. One of the elders approached them immediately. "You have returned just in time," she told Marisala. "The awakening begins." "The awakening?" Logan questioned. Marisala turned to him, her amber eyes glowing with an inner light he hadn't seen before. "Come, you should witness this." She led him quickly through the settlement and back toward the marker stone where they had left the confrontation with Nova. The vibration in the ground grew stronger as they approached, accompanied by a harmonic sound that seemed to come from the earth itself. When they reached the site, Logan stopped in amazement. The scene had transformed dramatically. The crystal monolith now pulsed with blinding intensity, its network of heart paths fully illuminated and visibly growing. New crystalline formations emerging from the soil like rapidly growing plants. The Silvaki were arranged in concentric circles as before, but now their ceremonial movements had taken on a new quality, more primal, more connected to the earth beneath them. And at the periphery stood the Nova team, their equipment disabled, their personnel watching in evident alarm as the crystal network expanded, now encircling their position completely. Logan spotted Celera directing the ceremony and made his way to her side, Marisala following closely. "What's happening?" he asked, having to raise his voice over the resonant hum emanating from the crystals. "The awakening," Celera replied, her voice vibrating with the same frequency as the crystals. "When threatened, Verdant defends itself. We merely guide the process." Logan watched in awe as the crystalline growth continued, now forming delicate structures that rose several meters from the ground, creating a forest of luminescent spires around the original monolith. The Nova equipment that had been scanning the network was now completely entangled in crystal growth, rendered useless. Director Warner stood with her security team, her composed facade finally cracking as she witnessed the inexplicable phenomenon. When she spotted Logan, she broke away from her group and approached, her expression a mixture of anger and unease. "What have you done, Hayes?" she demanded. "This isn't natural crystalline formation. It's impossible." "I've done nothing, Director," Logan replied calmly. "You're witnessing Verdant's response to your intrusion. The very thing you sought to exploit is now defending itself." Warner glanced nervously at the still expanding crystal structures. "This is some kind of indigenous technology, some trick to scare us off." "No trick," Celera interjected, joining their conversation. "Verdant lives. The heart paths are its veins. When threatened, they manifest to protect themselves." Warner's scientific skepticism warred with the evidence before her eyes. "That's impossible. Crystals don't grow like this. They don't respond to threats." "Your understanding is limited," Celera replied without condescension. "Verdant is not like other worlds you have encountered." As if to emphasize her point, several crystal formations suddenly sprouted directly beneath Nova's heavy machinery, lifting the massive excavators several meters into the air, where they balanced precariously on delicate-looking but incredibly strong crystalline pillars. Warner's team began to panic, some calling for retreat, others suggesting more aggressive measures. Warner herself seemed frozen in indecision, her carefully constructed extraction plan crumbling before her eyes. "I suggest you withdraw, Director," Logan said firmly, "before the situation escalates further." "This isn't over, Hayes," Warner hissed, her composure finally breaking. "The committee will hear about your interference, your collusion with the indigenous population. Your career is finished." Logan touched the teal token at his collar. "My career with the committee may be over, but my life here is just beginning. I've made my choice, Director. I suggest you make yours. Leave now, peacefully, or face the consequences of Verdant's defense." For a moment, Warner looked as though she might argue further. But a sudden acceleration in crystal growth, with formations now reaching toward Nova's remaining operational equipment, made the decision for her. "Pull back," she ordered her team. "Secure what equipment you can and retreat to the landing zone." The Nova personnel scrambled to obey, abandoning the entangled machinery and gathering only their personal gear and portable devices. Within minutes, they had formed a ragged column moving back the way they had come, Warner casting one final venomous glance at Logan before joining the retreat. As Nova withdrew, the crystal growth gradually slowed, though the formations remained, a glittering forest of impossibly delicate structures surrounding the central monolith. The Silvaki ceremony also eased, transitioning from the intense, earth-shaking rhythm to a gentler, almost celebratory movement. They will return, Marisala said, watching the Nova team disappear into the forest. With more machines, more weapons. Perhaps, Logan acknowledged. But by then, the committee will have received my report and the Silvaki documentation. The indigenous protection protocols will be in effect. And if your committee decides in favor of the Crystal Seekers? Celera asked pragmatically. Logan gestured to the newly formed crystal forest around them. Then Verdant will defend itself again. But I don't think it will come to that. What happened here today isn't just about indigenous rights anymore. It's about a planetary phenomenon unlike anything in committee records. The scientific community will insist on thorough study before any extraction is permitted. Celera seems satisfied with this assessment. Then we have won this confrontation, if not the war. The war continues as it has for millennia, Marisala added, between those who would take and those who would preserve. But now we have a voice among the takers. She looked at Logan, who nodded in understanding of his new role, a bridge between worlds, an advocate for Verdant and its people among human institutions. As the Silvaki celebration continued around them, Logan, Marisala, and Celera moved to the base of the central crystal monolith, which still pulsed with inner light, though more gently now. Celera placed her hand on the crystal surface, which responded by glowing brighter beneath her touch. Verdant has chosen you as well, Logan Hayes, she said solemnly. It is time to complete what was begun. 3 days later, Logan stood before the assembled clans, dressed in ceremonial Silvaki attire. The committee's response had arrived exactly as he'd predicted: immediate protection status for all Silvaki territories, a formal censure of Nova extraction, and a request for Logan to serve as official liaison between humans and Silvaki. The crystal network had receded somewhat, but remained more visible than before, a permanent reminder of Verdant's living nature. Nova's abandoned equipment stood as silent monuments, gradually being reclaimed by the forest. The bond ceremony may begin, Celera announced to the gathered clans. Marisala approached, radiant in elaborate ceremonial attire. As they joined hands before the crystal monolith, Logan felt Verdant itself respond, the ground humming softly beneath them, the crystal glowing with approval. 2 beings, 2 worlds, 1 path forward, Celera intoned, wrapping a living vine embedded with crystal fragments around their joined hands. What Verdant has brought together, let no force divide. The ceremony concluded with Logan and Marisala pressing their foreheads together, the traditional Silvaki gesture now carrying deeper meaning. The vine around their hands briefly flared with crystal light before unwinding itself, leaving behind matching spiral patterns on their skin, permanent markers of their bond. 1 year later, Logan's old monitoring hut had transformed. Now expanded into a proper dwelling integrated with the forest, it served as both home and diplomatic outpost. Logan's reports to the committee had evolved into a comprehensive cultural exchange program, with carefully selected human scientists invited to study Verdant's unique ecology alongside Silvaki guides. Nova Extraction had abandoned their claim entirely after their equipment failures were traced to the Crystal Network's defensive properties that defied conventional science and made extraction both dangerous and unprofitable. As evening fell, Logan stood with Marisala on their dwelling's threshold, watching the twin moons rise. Their hands intertwined, the spiral bond marks still visible on their skin. Any regrets? Marisala asked, her amber eyes reflecting the moonlight. Logan shook his head. Not one. I found my true home when you all took shelter in my hut that stormy night. Marisala's scales shimmered with contentment. And I was right all along, she said with a smile. I saw you first. They turned together toward their home, the crystal path beneath their feet glowing softly to light their way forward. And that was the end of the story. If you listened all the way to here, don't forget to leave feedback about what you thought of the story in the comments, whether positive or negative. Your feedback helps us improve. Also leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. And I'll leave here on the screen another video that I'm sure you'll like. Big hug and see you in the next story.